one day our home group will sing you a song. One day. But it won't be that one. So, we're continuing on in Exodus. And the Israelites, they have now been rescued. And they've been rescued out of roughly 400 years of slavery in Egypt and 400 years of oppression. They are pursued and God parts the sea for them and they cross the dry ground. Their opponents come following and the sea crushes them and they are no longer. Their oppressors are wiped out and they are free. They're free, they've been rescued and they're safe. It's all very miraculous. It's extremely miraculous how they see the hand of God, how they see the hand of God through the plagues, how Moses was saved out of the sea, the river, in the basket and raised up in the palace. They could have never imagined all these things were going to come to pass. And here they are. They're on the other side of the sea. And we're now looking at the story from near the end of chapter 15, and we're going to take it through to 17. And we get these stories of the Israelites grumbling and complaining and blaming. And, you know, that's the state of the human heart, isn't it? It is, I wish I didn't complain and grumble. I wish other people didn't complain and grumble. There they are, complaining and grumbling. And yet it's so easy for us to go there. We all do it. It was only last week, perhaps, that I'm looking for a lid to a pot in the cupboard. And I can't find it. And I am grumbling and I am complaining and it's not there. It has to be somewhere close. It just has to be. Like, where can it go? It has probably been put in the wrong place because somebody else has emptied the dishwasher, which is a good thing. But they've probably put it in the wrong place, a bad thing. And I can't find it. Finally, after a lot of complaining and grumbling, there it is. It is in the right place, but it's way up the back. And I'm now frustrated, and the kitchen is now too untidy for me to do anything, and things are falling into the sink, and I'm trying to reach for something, and Stephen, who is there trying to help me, is in my way, and I can't reach it, and it just escalates. It is ridiculous, isn't it? It is ridiculous. And I am very grateful that something snapped in my head quite quickly, and I just thought, don't let not finding a lid just ruin your evening or even ruin this moment. I mean, it is just crazy, and I put it aside. But it leads me back to the Israelites. You know, my problem was just a lid. Who cares? I could have maybe changed the pot. But theirs is about food. It's about water. They're in a desert. Perhaps there's stories that there's perhaps 500,000 of them out in this desert. There's children, there's babies, there's the families, the livestock, all the packs, all the things that they carry to start their new life again. And they're on this journey and they're unsure exactly which direction and how long it's going to take. They don't have Google Maps to sit and work out exactly which direction and how long exactly it is going to take. And I feel we can be harsh on the people as we read these stories of them grumbling. There's a little funny thing for you there. But we're harsh. I think we're harsh. You know, we're grumbling over a missing lid or things not going our way is pathetic, but food and water is extremely important. You're going to die without them. And they blame Moses, they blame Aaron and their leaders. And yet Moses says to them in chapter 16, verse 8, "Who are we? You are not grumbling against us, but against the Lord, against Yahweh." Reminded me when he said, "Who am I that you should send me Remember that back at the burning bush with that quite frustrating conversation of Moses not really wanting to go. And then God revealed his name, I am. Moses has grown a lot since then. He says, you're not grumbling against us, but you're grumbling against Yahweh, the great I will be, the one who reigns forever and ever, the one who rescued them. Yes, they are concerned about food and water. It is important. Without them, they're going to die. But Yahweh rescued them from slavery. Yahweh destroyed their enemies. Yahweh miraculously parted the waters. He saved them. Surely if they remember all that, if they remember only what happened to them just a few days ago, they would trust him for food and for water. Now, their first grumble is at the bitter waters, which Disney's actually going to expound on next week. There are so many themes in that passage. It is absolutely fascinating, and we're going to go further into that next week. For today, what we see from that is the mercy of God. God gives them water. They grumble, he responds, and he gives them water. And they move on, and they grumble again. They want food, and God gives them this bread from heaven, manna. What is it? That's literally what manna translates to. What is it? And then he gives them quail for meat. And God gives them instructions. He says that he does give them tests, which they actually fail again and again. And God responds in mercy again and again. Then when we come to chapter 17, they travel further. And again, they quarrel with Moses that they have nothing to drink. After seeing all these times of provision where God has given them, once again, they're complaining they have nothing to drink. Why do you put the Lord to the test, says Moses in 17, verse 2. And God shows Moses a rock at Horeb. And he's told to strike it, and water will come out. And he names the place Messah and Meribah, meaning testing and quarreling. And then we come after this one to this story where we first meet Joshua in the Exodus story. And there's really no introduction to him. It's just Joshua is there. And Joshua leads them in this battle against the Amalekites. And it's that story where Moses stands on top of the hill with the staff in his hand. You can read it in chapter 17, verse 9. And while his hands are raised, the Israelites are winning. And when he lowers them, they're losing. And he keeps his hands raised with the help of Aaron and Hur, and they won. And then the Lord told Moses, he said to Moses to write this on a scroll to be remembered. And Moses also built an altar and called it, "The Lord is my banner." Have you noticed, right through the Bible, God tells us to remember. God tells us to remember what has happened, to remember what God has done. Remember the Lord. Take care not to forget. Remember the former things of old. Remember the deeds of the Lord. Bless the Lord, O my soul, and forget not his benefits. I will remember the deeds of the Lord. Yes, I will remember your wonders of old. I will ponder on your work and meditate on your mighty deeds. This is such a vital aspect to our faith. How can I grumble and complain when I remember that Stephen loves me and he stands in the kitchen because he's trying to help me? That my children, they love me and they empty the dishwasher, one, because they're meant to do it. But I asked one of them, why do you empty the dishwasher? And he knew I was fishing for the right answer. He started with a few and then he says, Oh, because I want to help you? I was like, yes. Right answer. Wasn't Dan. But when we remember these things, the frustration goes. And this is what makes the manna story so important. You know, they were to gather the manna for 6 days only. We know the story. And not on the Sabbath day. The day of rest. The holy Sabbath day. The day that they would stop all the other distractions in life, including gathering of the manna, and remember the Lord. A day that points to the ultimate rest and goodness of God. One day of every week that reminds them and points them to God's provision and love for this world, for them. You know, God knows our hearts and how forgetful we are. How quick we forget His love. How quick we forget His provision. How quick we forget His goodness. How quick we forget the answered prayer that He may have given us only last week or even just the day before. We do forget, and we start to grumble and question His ways, and our faith is not so strong. And that's why we see through the stories, through Genesis and through Exodus, of building altars and place names that remind them of the story and remind them ultimately of the faithfulness of God, His answers, His ways, and the future hope that we have in Him. It wasn't necessarily a reminder of a method or a formula. You know, later in the desert, it's important that Moses spoke to the rock for water and not strike the rock like he did earlier. Because God doesn't have formulas. He's relational, and relationships grow and they change, and He seems to have this way of surprising us with new ways that hold true to His character of His goodness. What He wants us to remember is His utter faithfulness that He has shown us in the past, and what we can do with that for today. To trust Him today, and to trust Him into the future. He told them to take an omer of manna and keep it for the generations to come, so that they can see the bread I gave you to eat in the desert when I brought you out of Egypt. It's important to remember. And they get to see the manna to remember. I've actually asked Lara to come and just share a testimony of remembering God's faithfulness and what that did for her.
Hi, everyone. So it was quite apt that I had to use exactly what Christine's talking about on Wednesday. So I don't know how many of you have ever had like a massive burst of adrenaline, but it's amazing. You know, you do these superhuman things, and you think, wow, how did I do that? You know, and you're alert, and you've got power, and it feels amazing. Well, the opposite of that is stage fright. And things, the simplest of things that you can do, you can't even do. Everything vanishes. Your brain goes somewhere, nowhere to be seen. Everything starts shaking. You have a physiological response, the same as with adrenaline. Anyway, so on Wednesday, Alec and I were doing the cybersecurity talk, and we came to practice. So I got up on stage, and we got the presentation there, and we're busy going through it, and I got like a major stage fright dosage. There wasn't even anyone here. We're busy speaking to nobody. And, you know, my tongue was stuck to my palate. My mouth was as dry as a desert. I was shaking, but I can deal with all that. But my brain was gone. Like I was reading the presentation and saying to Alec, "What is that? I don't even remember writing that. I can't do it." Basically, I was up here, and I thought, "There's no way I can do this. It'll be a shambles." So I thought, okay, what do we do now? So first thing was call on the Lord. And I had two scriptures that I had been sort of for the last 3 weeks meditating on. One was Jeremiah 17, verse 7 and 8, that says, "Trust in the Lord and put your confidence in him." And then it ends with saying, basically, you'll never fail. You'll always bear fruit. And so I thought, okay, that's great. I'll just put all my confidence in him. Don't have to have any in me. That's great. And then the second one was Joshua 1, verse 9, that says, never be terrified or afraid because I'm with you. So I thought, okay, I can do this. And literally, when I walked through the door, I was ready until I got up here. And then it all vanished. So I was calling on the Lord, saying, "Lord, I've been meditating on these. Where is it? Give it to me now, please." And so the next thing was I thought, call for help. That's what the body of Christ is for. So I sent a text to Christine, "Please pray. I've got major stage fright. I can't do this in this state." And then Diz was working downstairs, and I went down to Diz, and I was wanting to talk options. Like literally nothing was working. And so he spent a good half hour with me, trying to encourage me. But, without my brain being there, I literally couldn't do it. And I didn't want to embarrass Alec. Anyway, I was eventually Diz, with 15 minutes to go, we talked alternatives, and we thought I could record myself in my room at home and, post it later, or Alec could do my bits, or we just can it because we have plenty to talk about to fill the time. And I sat at the back for 15 minutes just going through this fight, trying to get what I needed to get up there, because cancelling it just felt like, it didn't feel like a victory. It felt like the devil was actually winning and stealing my voice, even in my business, And so I was busy with that fight on and quoting the scriptures and praying. And then I remembered I'd sent the text to Christine, and I thought, oh, maybe she replied. So get my phone out and I have a look. And she'd put these 4 points down. And the last one was, "Remember when you did that reading at the Uniting Church a couple of years ago? You were awesome. It was like you were born with a microphone in your hand." And I read that and I thought, oh, yeah. It literally, I hadn't remembered anything of that. And there were 2 minutes to go. Diz was going to just introduce Alec. And as I read that, I read it over and over and over, and the memory of that time, because I had the same stage fright then, the memory of that time and what God did, just this insurgence of something just came in, and I was at the back, and I stood up, and I thought, it just overrode everything. And I still felt the same, and I walked up, and I said to Diz, "You can introduce me too." And I was just hoping that God would give me my brain back, But I literally walked up because that just overrode everything. And, afterwards I thought, why didn't I remember that first? It's been a few years, but had I remembered that, I might have had that faith ahead of time, when I needed it. But God knew, and He used Christine, He used Diz to help me remember. So hopefully this testimony will remind me too for the future.
Thank you, Lara. So it's exactly what I'm talking about. To remember. And you know what? Let's keep reminding each other. Sometimes it's easier to see it and remember from the outside rather than the inside. And for other people to remind each other of the good things that they've seen and God working in their life. Sometimes we might think, of course they remember all that, and, perhaps they don't. And that's how we can really be encouraging one another. And we can all do that. We can all encourage one another. It doesn't matter how good our faith is or our abilities or our age or anything. We can be encouraging one another and just reminding each other of the goodness of God and what we have seen happen in their lives, because they may have forgotten. I love art and symbols because they are a reminder often, and that's why I asked Suvra to paint last week, and she's finishing off this amazing painting of the seas parting and Moses, and we're going to be able to have that up here so we can remember. And we can remember this series, and I'm sure each one of you have something where God has spoken to you during this series, and when you look at that piece of art, that is for you to remember. There was that painting of Turner Road track that Trevor did, that we were bidding on at the last soiree, that I really wanted. And time it was the very last second of the time of bidding, and I did close the bidding immediately on that second, knowing that Alec was going to come 10 seconds after and outbid me. Sorry. But I did keep to the rules. I did not close it early, I promise. I didn't. But it was to the second and you were too late. Do you know why I love that? For quite some time I had this practice, and every time I walked down Turner Road, like the track, the first bit, I would be praying for my family. And I would be praying for each member of my family. Then I'd get to this rock, and then I'd contemplate church and you people, and then I would be praying for you guys on the way back. But that painting is walking in. And so every time I look at that, I remember those times of speaking to God, and I remember him answering those prayers. It's a reminder. And I remember the prayers that he answered about my family. Sabbath keeping, it's not a requirement anymore of being part of the family of God like it was for the Hebrew people. But the practice of it is a reminder of God's goodness. It points to the hope that we have in the restoration of all things. It reminds us of God's provision, that we don't need to be productive every day and hoard like the manna. If they hoarded or took too much manna to keep, maggots came in it. But not on the seventh day when they took more than they needed for one day. It reminds us of life is in God's timing. When we give him our time, it's not my own. It's subject to the rule and reign of God. We participate to remind ourselves we live for God, to stop and reflect on his goodness, of our future hope and the ultimate rest that he has for each one of us. I was asking Amanda to join me now, the microphone. We often light candles, and it's something that the Uniting Church does every service that they have as a reminder. And Amanda can share with us what it reminds her of and why, and I will light the candle for you as you do that.
Absolutely. In the book of Isaiah, the prophet says that there is a light that will come in the darkness, but the darkness will never overcome that light. And when Jesus was around, Jesus was remembering this prophet. And so one time he said to these disciples, "Well, I am the light of the world." And lighting the Christ candle for both me and the church is remembering that Jesus is that light of the world. He is that light that the darkness will never, ever overcome. And if you think about light and what it does and what it provides warmth, it provides sight, it provides a sense of comfort and safety. And so that's why we light the Christ candle in the Uniting Church, and why lighting a candle when we meet together to remind us of Jesus' presence in this space is so important for both me and for the church.
Thank you. Sometimes nice to do some of these things in our homes and when we have gatherings. And we come to the communion table. What a wonderful way to remember. You know, Jesus said to do this in remembrance of him. And we come to the bread. And the bread here, you know, it represents Jesus' body. And the bread, it reminds me when I think of that, of, you know, his broken body. We often have the big loaf and we break it. We break the bread and we know that Jesus died for us. His body broke, it hurt, there was suffering. And we take this bread as a remembrance of that sacrifice that he made for me, for the world.
And in the same way, in that meal in the upper room, Jesus took a cup and he gave thanks and he said, "This is my blood shed for you." And this is a reminder of that story, but also what it meant, that sacrifice. And I'm reminded of that story, but I'm also reminded of my childhood, when we would have the communion glasses just like this with grape juice in it. And I'm reminded that this is not just a cup of grape juice. Is it grape juice? It's not just a cup of grape juice. This is a cup that has been shared across time, across millennia, across generations, across the world. And so it is a part of a much bigger story than the one we share today.
Thank you. As we come to the table today, I have put a jar here to remind us of the jar that the Israelites filled with manna as they were told to. And I want you to think about, as you come to the table, of what you need to place in your jar as a reminder of the good work Jesus has done in your life. What prayers has he answered that you need to remind yourself of? What provision has he given you need to remind yourself of? You know, often it's a lot of the little things. It's a lot of the little things, but they all add up and they fill the jar. And when we are intentional to fill that jar, remembering all that God has done, our trust grows, our faith grows, and that's what we've been talking about in this series, is trusting God. This is how we trust God. We remember what he has done. So I invite you, when you're ready, to come to the table. We have gluten-free over here and normal there, and Amanda and I will serve you. Come whenever you're ready and take it back to your seat and pray and contemplate and take communion when you are ready. But let me pray. Jesus, we thank you for this table. We thank you for the light, that you are the light of the world, that you light up the darkest places in this world, the darkest places in our hearts. Jesus, we thank you for the sacrifice that you made of giving your life here on earth for us. We thank you for the life that you give us through your resurrected life. And we thank you for the life that is to come. And Father, I just ask for a Holy Spirit reminder for each person in this building of the goodness that you have instilled in each person's life, for the answered prayers, the times of provision. May us all remember the things that you have done. In Jesus' name, amen.